Good afternoon, everyone. This is Saleem Sheikh. I've spent 1.5 decades in the HR and people management space in the ITES and the BPO sector. Currently, I'm leading the HR for the insurance business at the Excel service. Prior to that, I was in Accenture for about 4 years. I'm looking forward to an interactive session and I wish you have fun, and at least we'll also get to learn something from you guys.
Thanks, Saleem. Good evening, everyone. This is an interesting last session of the day. So, Chaitali Mukherjee, and I'm a partner with the PwC's People in Organization practice. I have spent almost 18 years into consulting, out of which 10 years have been into management consulting with TCS and IBM, and the balance has been with Manpower Group's right management. I've spent 2 years, of course, with Experis, which is a staffing brand, and with Conferry Negro. So a lot of similar things that I would hear you potentially. At PwC, of course, focusing a big way in growing the leadership practice, and that's why the subject is very, very interesting for me. Thanks.
All right, guys, I'll just share some quick views on leadership with you, and then we'll pop over to the other panelists and get their views on it. I want to keep it a little bit freewheeling within the panel. And towards the end, or if you think it's a very emergent need, we can also introduce and invite inputs from the audience. But suffice to say that I will keep some time aside towards the end to respect the amount of time you spent here, frankly, and engage in discussions. Now, when I look at leadership, say, broadly my experience and thinking, I think there are three things that we need to be very cognizant of. One is there is nothing new to leadership. I think the first leader emerged when we as humans maybe hunted the first animal, or created the first society, or maybe farmed for the first time. So we've had leaders for a while. And the other one is that the leaders are at all levels. Anybody I see in front of me is definitely a leader. In fact, I would go to say that anybody you guys see in your direct line of reporting would also be leaders. So you need leaders at every level. And you need them to perform well. And you need them to be trained for the skill that they need to impart. Harking back to an example, say from Army days, very famous war fought in 1999, Kargil. I lost a lot of my postmates, the guys I trained with then, because at 2 to 3 years of service, these are the guys who are actually leading charges at that level of warfare. And the Army had trained us well. And so we did a good job. Right? So now if you look at the war that was fought, the one that's the most recent memory, was fought at a very, very junior level. And junior leaders who perform well. So it's not only about the Napoleon that you think of, or Mr. Modi you think of when you look at leaders. Leaders are at all levels, need to be nurtured and grown. Now I'm not really sure whether they're born or made. What I'm saying is that they're important and they can definitely be trained and molded. And lastly, as a leader, one's always thinking about tomorrow, otherwise you will cease to be a leader. A true leader is a guy who's a visionary. Usually, these are interchangeably used for great leaders. So you have to be thinking about what's going to happen next. And prepare yourselves, your teams, if you're leading a business team or your countries, if you're a foundation, to be prepared for that change that's coming. The key difference that's happened, why it's become suddenly top topic for us in the staffing industry, is the pace of change has increased significantly, definitely aided by technology, but also by very, very quick communications that we're seeing. So in the past, if as a leader of Adecco, I would have taken maybe a week to decide something, today I have access to the data and the people that I need to converse with to be able to make that decision in 30 minutes. It's the need of the hour. However, given that I have only 30 minutes versus 7 days to think about it, I have to be on the spot very, very quickly. And that is a big challenge. And that cannot be inculcated when you reach a CXO level. You need to take it right up the growth as you go in life. And having said that, I would say, what is it that the leaders of today, so that they're prepared for tomorrow, what is it that it demands out of each one of us, from being stalwarts in staffing and recruiting industries, as also responsible corporate citizens? What is it that is really the need of the hour as we're struggling to find traction, to find success in an increasingly dynamic business world. So maybe I will harp upon the experience of unarguably the most experienced panelist we have here, Aquil, and if I get some views from him on what he thinks in his 40 plus years. He's probably been a scholar, he sees things change. What does he think of what we need to be prepared for tomorrow, today?
Priyanshu, as I see it, two major changes that are happening over the period of time in recent decade. The leaders were perceived to be top of the pyramid. And they were leading so-called from the front, people followed. That was the traditional way the leadership was perceived. The whole thing has now changed. Leaders now work shoulder to shoulder and in a flatter organization, in a flatter culture where people respect equality more than anything else. Leaders have to learn the art of working shoulder to shoulder. It's not easy because some of the leaders with grey hair or no hair have got to leadership positions after slogging it off, and they feel that if they've earned the right to be followed and the right to be seen as leaders, I think the whole concept has to change, and is changing very rapidly. Second, at one time, people went to leaders for everything. They were supposed to be, at least perceived, to be fountainhead of all knowledge and all answers. It's no more relevant. Leaders have to learn the art of getting answers from different sources to collaboration. And people look at leaders as functional leaders. So the leader may have one expertise, it's like a T function, like a letter T. They know a lot of things about small things, about a lot of things, but they know something about deep of one item. They did not know everything. And that is very difficult for some leaders to expect and accept. That why wouldn't they come to me for everything? I think this whole mindset of leader has to change, not the followers. They have to become shoulder-to-shoulder leaders, first amongst equals, and expertise knowledge rather than know everything. But combined with collaboration skill to get knowledge, get solutions, get answers from, so they become collaborators to get problems solved rather than solve all the problems themselves. Very major shift.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. However, I would think that if having no hair was a criteria, I would have it very easy. And also getting a little bit grey, so I think I'm going to be pretty much CEO for a very long time. Yeah, but unfortunately, that's not the criteria. Feel good with the guys who has. You should anyway feel good about it, but yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting insight as well on the fact that, he reiterates the fact that they are leaders across, but also that they need to be communicating with each other, and most importantly, understand that you don't know it all. Now, it comes easy for a guy like me, I was telling the panel earlier, who's not spent too much time in any one industry, to very openly say, look, you know what, I'm not really sure what to say. He explained this to me. But if you've been in the same industry, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to go to a person who's junior to you and say, look, can you tell me about this? Because you think you're expected to know it. But the speed at which things are changing, it's very difficult for a person to stay abreast and also lead a business. So maybe I'll hop on to Chaitali now and ask her, how do you enable this particular quality in the leaders, not only the ones who are already relatively at the top, but also the ones who are leaders in their own rights and are going to be there tomorrow. So we not only have to prepare today's top leaders for tomorrow, but we also have to prepare leaders for tomorrow, which has to happen today. It's a long process. It's a very long process. So Chaitali, what do you think about it from your experience?
So it's an interesting question, Priyanshu, because that's a space that I have been dabbling for a bit. So we'll take 2 steps back maybe, and I'll put across what I think is the definition of a leader. Anybody who is able to inspire and able to deliver results through people is a leader. And that leader could actually be a social worker working with uneducated people or illiterate people. A leader could also be someone who is leading an organization. A leader undoubtedly someone who is leading the nation, right? So this competence, and who knows it better than you? I'm an armed forces kid. So my dad always used to say that regardless of what's your leader's style, the Jawans would always want to go with a tough leader because they know when they're out to get the bullet, the tough leader will make you win. So different strokes for different folks. A leader's definition is someone who's able to inspire and get things done. Now when I come to a situation and when we are trying to do this kind of work of getting people to deliver results through people, the biggest challenge is the context is continuously changing. So if I look at the context in which development was happening in the past for leaders and the context in which development of leaders is happening today, it's dramatically different. In a constant environment, the development was around functional leadership, and today it is around a situation, decision making. How many data points can I actually handle to take a decision? And that's become the biggest challenge. And I was sharing with the panel a very interesting point of view that PwC has put on the table, which is about the future of work. Because if I have to develop leaders for the future of work, I first need to get my hand around what is the future of work. Only then can I actually start developing the leaders. But if you go through all the maze and go to the bottom of it, there are 3 or 4 very simple things. And number one thing that actually stays with me is transdisciplinarity. No more, to your point, Priyanshu, your ability to actually go and ask people, that I don't know this, so why don't you share what you know? That transdisciplinarity is no more about the content that I know. It is about the context that I'm able to bring to the table, based on my experience in that situation. So if I have to develop something like transdisciplinarity, how can I do it? Very simple, it starts with me. If I'm able to stand up and say, I don't know, 70% of the journey is done. And that is the toughest one, by the way, because we all have this very big load on our heads that I am supposed to be quote unquote the leader, so I need to have all the answers. So I think that's the starting point if you ask me. The moment we are able to make people more aware that you cannot have all the answers, it's a starting point. Number 2, I think the leaders will have to walk the talk. If the leaders are actually able to go and have this conversation and say, you know it better than I do, I think the journey starts to happen really well. Because the sense of vulnerability is something that everybody needs to experience. If I don't experience vulnerability, I'll not be able to be vulnerable in front of the other. And the third and the most important point according to me is technology changes at such a massive pace. And I always like to talk about 3 generations. There are digital immigrants, there are digital natives, and the digital